What's going on, guys? It's the Steam King here. Back. I know it's been a while, but I have something really special planned for you guys. So, today we're going over the history of my modules because it has been long overdue since I've shown you what's going on, what's also going on with the club. But really, what this video is about is what's going on with the modules. What do my modules look like? And unless you've been following me on Facebook, which I don't think a lot of my subscribers have been, um, you probably haven't seen what the modules look like. So what I decided to do was I decided that for the people who are subscribed to me who haven't seen what the modules look like now, who have been subscribed to me for years now, I've been following the channel. But for also the people who do know what's going on, I thought I would do a video showing the history of the modules, going from the very beginning to when the modules were just raw, and then working our way up into the present day to where the modules are now. And I think that for the people who have only seen the current stuff and the people who have only seen the old stuff, I think that this will be a really interesting video for all of you. And please leave your feedback, leave your comments, everything in the comment section below. Share the video. Let's get some discussion. I would really like some people to talk to me about how they think I did. Basically, my first time doing actual modeling in model railroading. There's so many aspects to this hobby, and I think one of the most important that a lot of people don't get into is the actual modeling aspect, creating something that looks real, and that's what basically we're building up to here. But let's just start all the way back at the beginning, which is when I first bought the modules. I think I first started off with two modules. Okay, they're 4 feet by I believe 32, 33 inches, and I had two of them. They were a pair. I think I paid like $120, $125 or something like that. And what you're seeing right here, these pictures are pictures of my modules right when I first started work. So basically, the engine shed, I had just placed it there. There was no lights, nothing in it. It was just the engine shed, and it was just sitting there on a bed of cork that I had just hammered down. And I was kind of getting an idea of what I was going to do, um, with the with my modules in terms of just the actual placement, because I knew I bought that engine shed at a what was it, at an estate sale. It was one of my grandmother's friends. Their father had passed away, and what had happened was he was big into model railroading, and this is one of the things that I found at his house. So I picked it up, and actually I believe just about all the structures that you're gonna see throughout this video came from that estate sale, with a few exceptions. But anyway, I was getting an idea of how I was going to place stuff, and I had just laid down the track, just nailed down the track for the interior of the locomotive shed, and I was really excited. I'm like, wow, this looks really cool. Other thing was, people had been giving me crap at the club because I had my modules like a good 4 to 6 months and hadn't done any work. So I said, you know what, let me just get started. Let me just get to work on these and get rolling here. So I began progress on them. But really, what this did was it led us into the planning and experimenting phase. And after I laid those first two sections of track, we kicked it into high gear. So then basically how it works is there's me, and there's a guy next to me who his name is Guy. He's actually my closest friend. It's kind of like a father figure to me. He's the person that I'm closest to at the train club. You'll see him here in some of these photos. You guys have seen him in previous videos, in the detailing a locomotive shop interior video. He was the person that was in that video. And basically we had owned an entire flank of modules together, on the east side of the layout, and that's a term that you're going to hear me use quite often. We were known as the east side, okay? And everybody would run their trains by, through our modules, our section of modules. They would say, "Oh yeah, we're going by Clinton Guy's east side." And there's actually a funny story I'll get into later, about the name, for the east side. But anyway, we started going through our planning phase for the east side. So Guy had, like, at the time, I think these photos were taken before we owned the entire flank, right? And because there was one guy who owned like a drag strip that was at the end, but eventually he would take that out later. But anyway, guy had it started off with his farm. He had two farm modules. Then he had two water. He had like a little river that two modules that two river modules that were connected to the farm. Then came my two, and then there was another set owned by him, which was well one that we call Sandy, and you'll probably see pictures of that one later. But the interesting thing was the sand module that he had actually tied directly into the modules that I owned. He this was a project that he and another guy were working on before I had came along, and that guy kind of fell off from the club and didn't come around too often. But he ended up selling me the modules. Um, and Guy and I, that's kind of one of the reasons why Guy and I started to become really close, is because we had a mutual vested interest in having our modules put together. So we ended up connecting our stuff because it was already designed to go together. So anyway, he brought in the sand module, and then he had a turntable, and a roundhouse, and there was another corner module that he had as well. And that kind of made us, that kind of stretched out the entire east flank just about. And we'll get to that later anyway. But we were basically going through the planning stages here. So as you can see, we're looking at where to place the coal tower, the water tower, and we went through a lot of different ideas. We went through just I went through this stage where I wanted everything. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have like 16 tracks, and I'm gonna have like a coal bin, and then I want a sand bin, I want a coal tower and a water tower and a train station and a department store and a warehouse and my engine shed. Oh, and the engine shed, yeah, the engine shed's got to have all these crazy details, and it was getting out of hand. So I had to I had to refine it. And Guy always goes over this concept called less is more. So he's like, let's kind of dial it back a little bit. So as you can see here, there's a picture of me, and we're at this time we were talking about putting in a new track, a new switch track, a new siding. And I was originally going to have the coal tower on that siding. And as you can see over there, there's you see the water tower in the distance, and you can also see the what is it? The train station. So those are a little ways. Those are on the other module. So these two modules. Let me explain this as well. Two modules are we have names for them. There's the shop, and then there's the approach. Okay. The approach is the one that you're seeing right here with the warehouse on it. Okay, that's the approach module. And then the shop is obviously the one with the engine shop, the engine locomotive shed. That's my steam locomotive repair facility that I have in my modules. But basically, I was trying to figure out where to put everything. And so, if you don't know how this is important for me to bring up too. There's gonna be some terminology that you guys are gonna need to know. So, in terms of figuring out how tracks are placed or the names of tracks are on modules, you determine that by how many inches they are from the edge. So if you're looking at this picture right here, the closest track to the edge is called the 5 line because it's 5 inches away from the edge of the module. Then the next one would be the 7 line because it's 7 inches away. And then that's all that's required on a module, right? 5 and 7. That's the main line. But Guy and I are crazy, and we had a 9 line, a 14 line, and also a 27 line. The 27 line is the one that hasn't been built yet. It's all the way. You see, if you see that cork there in the back, the one that the kind of I'm leaning on right over there. That's that is the 27 line. That's our backtrack. I used it kind of like as a branch line, right? And then the 14 line is basically the track that comes off of the 9. It's more of like a siding or a switch track that goes off of the 9 line and cuts away. And then also the cork here that's at an angle behind that warehouse, that is another, I think that's another 14 line. But basically that was designed to tie into the waterway, and that's why we called it the approach, because it was approaching the waterway, or when you came out of the waterway, you were approaching my modules. Either way you want to look at it, but that was the approach module where the warehouse is sitting on. And then, like I said, the other one is the shop. So I just want to make sure you guys understand the terminology, because I'm going to be using that quite often in this video. So approach and shop modules, okay? 5, 7, 9, and 27 lines are the main tracks that you guys are going to be hearing about in this video, okay? So just as long as we got the terms understood, we're good. So anyway, so originally the warehouse was supposed to be on the 9 line, okay, and the coal tower is going to be on the makeshift 14 line, the one that was on the approach that was heading towards the waterway. At least that's how I had it in my mind. And I was originally going to have the water tower next to the train station, but after some serious thinking and planning, we decided to change it up a bit. And what we did was I actually decided to put the coal tower behind the locomotive shed, or right next to the locomotive shed. And this kind of goes into the whole experimenting phase, because after we kind of got everything established, right? After we kind of got everything placed, everything figured out, the coal tower. It's interesting because I had just started to get into weathering at this point. I had never weathered anything before, and I had just right when about the time that we had figured out where we were going to put the coal tower, what I had decided to do was decided I was going to um, weather it. But what I did first before I weathered that was I weathered a few freight cars here and there. Weathered a few hopper cars, a few gondolas, no locomotives. I was too afraid to touch locomotives, but that didn't last too long. But I wanted to experiment on freight cars first because I wanted to get the hang of that. But Guy had a great idea of weathering the coal tower, the coal temple, because as you can see here, it's this really weird beige reddish color, right? So I started to go to town on it, did a little bit at first, and then things got a little crazy, and now it looks like what you see here, more or less. Um, and honestly, this wasn't even completely weathered at this point. This was close to being finished, but not quite. I have some pictures that you'll see later on of what the cold tower looks like now, but this was like the first couple coats of the weathering powders that I put on. But I think that this turned out very well. I was very happy. I mean, it was, like I said, it was the first time I had ever weathered a building. I'm like, and things I never thought about. I only thought about weathering like locomotives and rolling stock, but buildings, what? Never. But I got into weathering buildings, and I was very happy with the way that it turned out. And I was just ecstatic. I was just really ecstatic. And here's a picture of actually that's the first weathered freight car I ever did, next to the first weathered building I ever did. So I really excited me when I did that. And it was a great time. But anyway, back to the planning phase. So things things were still a little crazy, as you can see here. You look in the left hand corner, closest to the 5 line, you can see a signal and a signal tower there. That was the original signal tower that I was going to use. Um, and the signal, here's the interesting thing about the signal. So the little car, the little red car that you saw in the first first 4 videos, the first 4 pictures. Not a lot of people know this, but that car actually has a unique feature. And this was Guy's idea too. What we did with that signal was we actually cut the wires, extended them. We soldered on new wires, fed that switch, the switch to change the color of the signal. We fed that underneath the module. We cut a hole out in the center, and we put a little car. We took the little red car, drilled out a hole in the bottom of the car, and then put it over the switch. So now I've got like a hidden switch on my module. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's a secret. But I've got a hidden switch on my module where if you can move that car forward and back, and what that does is it changes the color of the signal. So people will come by sometime, and I'll just put my hand on top of the module, move the car, and like they'll be going underneath the module, and they'll be looking for the switch. Like, how do you change the color of the signal? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's not important. You don't need to know about that. So I did that. You won't be able to tell in these photos. Here's another thing I have. There is a little station platform that actually came in an in-scale train set that I got when I was 3. My aunt, it was a Santa Fe in-scale battery operated train set. It was really cool. And it was a little station platform I had that was actually really just too big for in-scale, but it was just about the right size for HO. Originally, I was going to use that. There were 2 of them. I was going to put those next to each other as the station platform for my train station that was there. And you'll get a closer up of the train station pretty soon. But I decided against it. I decided that I wasn't going to do that. A lot of people didn't like it. They thought it was too unprototypical. And the more I looked at it, I had to agree with them. It wasn't the right size. It was still a bit out of scale. It was a bit clunky. It looked more like a subway station platform than it did like a steam era station platform. So we decided to scrap that, and we went with something else later on, which you're going to see in just a minute here. But you know, we at this stage we're still going through the planning phase, and you can see that I've got a bunch of buildings on here. So the warehouse is still, I still had plans for the warehouse to be on the 9 line. At this point in time, we had just put that switch in, right? I just put the switch in for the approach. So now the approach and the shop are now connected. And as you can see here, you probably won't be able to tell, but you see that little yellow Union Pacific passenger car there. That was the siding for the approach that connected the approach to the waterway module. So that building that you see there, the big white, it's got that huge roof. It's white. There's a little bit of red in there. You probably won't be able to tell, but that was originally supposed to go there, and then the warehouse was going to be on the 9 line. Then you can see the passenger station over there with that clunky platform. The cold tower is now where it's supposed to be. It's weathered. It's nailed in. And I put the water tower next to the cold tower over there too. I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna have the water tower right directly next to the cold tower. Which I decided against later on. I didn't know what I want to do with the water tower. I'm gonna be honest. I think the train station is the only thing that actually stayed where I had originally thought it was gonna be. That's the only thing that actually stayed there, other than the engine shed too. I knew where the engine shed was gonna go because it tied directly into Guy's Sandy module. But anyway, so you can see all these buildings here. It's just a cluttered mess. We decided to get rid of a few things. So that big red and white building that you see over there on that siding going towards the waterway from the approach to the waterway, we got rid of that. Okay, I got rid of that, and I decided to put the warehouse there, and you'll see that in a minute. And then also that signal tower over there. So let's talk about the signal tower real quick, okay? And we're gonna go through a few images I don't think anyone's ever seen. Um, if you're looking at the signal tower now, it looks like it's been burnt. Okay, so I had a little accident where I was experimenting. Right, I took some spray paint and I tried to spray the inside of the signal tower because it I didn't want the light to shine through when we put the light in because I had the light there already. The light was already in. That was one of the first few things before we actually seriously got into lighting. The only two things that had lights at the time were the signal and the signal tower, but the light was always shining through the signal tower. So what I did is I tried to spray paint the inside. But the thing is, I can't remember if I taped the windows. No, I did tape the windows. The problem was the paint seeped through the tape and it made the windows black. So I popped the windows out and I'm like, okay, I'll just put plastic in later. But the problem was then the paint seeped through the cracks of the signal tower itself. And so now it's got this burnt down building weathered look, and it was not cool. I didn't like it at all. So I ended up scrapping that and I replaced it with another signal tower that you're going to see in a minute. But these are some shots that I took a long time ago. I don't think I've ever showed these on my channel before. I don't think anyone's ever seen these. These are shots of just my Mikado and my New York Central Hudson kind of running. I did some night running when I was at the club, and I took some nighttime shots. And you're going to see a few nighttime shots. I love doing night scenes on my modules. And as we progress through this story here, you're going to see that when we actually got the lighting effects in, oh god, it's just absolutely fantastic. I love it so much. But you can with this one right here with the Hudson at the red signal and the Mikado going by, you can kind of get an idea of how bad that signal turned out. I don't really have a close up of the signal or the signal, sorry, the signal tower. You can kind of see how the paint bled through. But yeah, I didn't really like that too much, so I had to swap it out. But at this point in time, I had kind of started to get everything focused in. I kind of was like I was saying. I mean, we went through several weeks of planning, guys, and that's the main thing about a model railroad. And this is the part that I miss and I love about it. It was the planning phase of, okay, where are we gonna put this building? Where are we gonna put that building? Okay, we could do this. Well, prototypically, would this work here? Well, would they actually have the signal here? Okay, where would the signal tower actually go? Okay, well, but would there be a warehouse this close to a rail yard? Okay, well, where would the coal tower actually be? Okay, would the water tower actually be here or would it be there? There's a lot of things that you have to ask yourself if you want it to be realistic. There are a lot of things that you have to ask yourself about. Would A, B, and C be prototypical with Z, Y, and X? And just kind of getting it all to mesh together to make a perfect scene. So Anyway, that was the planning phase. And once we had got all the buildings dialed in, we moved to the next section, which was lighting and detailing.